We have all heard about the importance of being carbon neutral and meeting the target for net zero emissions, but what do these terms mean, and how can designers contribute positively? Something is described as carbon neutral when no additional carbon dioxide is added to the atmosphere during its creation or operation. The term carbon neutral can apply to individuals, companies, buildings, products, or even countries. Carbon neutrality can be achieved by eliminating emissions where possible and by offsetting emissions that can't be eliminated. A typical example would be the reforestation and carbon storing in agriculture. Carbon neutrality is defined by an internationally recognized standard, PAS 2060. An ISO standard is also currently under development that will build on PAS 2060 and allow designers and architects to certify products and buildings as carbon neutral. This new ISO standard will be crucial for creating an understanding of what is required to be carbon neutral in industry. Net zero aligns with the Paris Climate Agreement goal of limiting global temperature rises to plus 1.5 degrees Celsius. The UK government set in law the world's most ambitious climate change target, cutting emissions progressively by 2050 to match 1990 levels. Net zero is therefore a target to negate the amount of greenhouse gases produced by human activity to prevent an uncontrolled rise in global temperatures. The levels stipulated in the Paris Climate Agreement can only be achieved by reducing emissions and by removing carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. There is no internationally recognized standard governing net zero, but adopting and implementing the recommendations of the Paris Climate Agreement is widely considered to be the benchmark for decarbonization efforts. While the two terms may seem similar and interchangeable, that is not actually the case. The main differences are based on the type of emissions addressed by each. Emissions are categorized as Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions. Scope 1 relates to emissions that a company is directly responsible for. Scope 2 relates to emissions related to purchased electricity, heat, and steam. Scope 3 concerns indirect emissions generated throughout the full range of activities needed to create a product or service. For example, driving to and from meetings creates CO2, and these levels need to be included as part of the total contribution for a product's development. Carbon neutrality covers only Scope 1 and 2 emissions, and simply encourages measures to tackle Scope 3 emissions rather than making them mandatory. Carbon offsetting is an acceptable strategy for dealing with emissions. A specific product or service can be carbon neutral, and this can be demonstrated by certifying that to PAS 2060. Being carbon neutral is a first step in achieving net zero. Net zero requires a country or an organization to eliminate their Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, and when those emissions can't be eliminated, they have to be removed from the atmosphere. An organization can only claim to be net zero when it can prove scientifically that its emissions of greenhouse gases are balanced by removals of greenhouse gases over a specified period in keeping with the trajectory set out in the Paris Climate Agreement. Given that SMEs account for almost the entire business population of the UK, they have a vital role to play in the UK achieving net zero. Net zero represents a commitment to strong action to tackle climate change, linked to the ambition and targets set out in the Paris Climate Agreement. For businesses, setting a net zero target enhances credibility and brand reputation. This approach drives innovation towards more sustainable solutions, creates resilience, and helps prepare a company for the inevitable future climate legislation. There are strong indications that businesses will lower their running costs and attract new customers by working towards net zero. The circular economy is based on the principle of eliminating waste and pollution, circulating products and materials, and regenerating nature. Instead of continually extracting more resources from the earth to make our products, existing products and materials are kept in circulation for as long as possible. It is seen by many as a key part of a plan for a net zero society. It is believed that 55% of emissions can be tackled by using renewable energy, but most of the rest is related to how we make our food and our products. Designers in all disciplines have a critical role to play in the journey to becoming a net zero society. Designers work across a wide economic spectrum and have influence at many levels. Designers are often the ones that can make the links between research and development, manufacturing, and the application of innovation out in the real world. In 2021, the Design Council released Beyond Net Zero, a systemic design approach. in which the subject of how designers can work towards net zero targets was investigated. The report detailed several of the barriers that currently stand in the way of change. It also highlighted the key characteristics of those individuals and teams that are currently leading the change. Very importantly, it proposed a framework for systemic design, and we have distilled that down to what we think we as designers and our clients can do. Avoid confusion and improve collaboration by only using terms that are clearly defined and understood by contributors. Where we do not understand terms, we should engage with others and become conversant with a common language. We can be prepared to share know-how and working with others, so we all move quickly to achieve common goals for net zero. We can all challenge the attitude of industry to be less competitive and more collaborative. We can avoid the tendency to stay within our own field and encourage communication with people working in other sectors and professions to develop a collective understanding. The lack of awareness of innovation in one area may mean missing out on an innovation that can potentially be of use elsewhere. We can avoid focusing on the bottom line, because this ignores the need to focus on delivering benefit to people and the planet. We should not make tokenistic changes for perceived marketing credibility, because this will damage the prospects of truly ethical companies who will make a real difference given the opportunity. We should work ethically with sustainability integrated as a core requirement of the design, and we should challenge the perception of those who say that ethical results have to come at the cost of financial gain. Design briefs don't always give designers the freedom in projects to get to the root of the problem, and this shortcoming can prevent being able to fulfill the potential of contributing to net zero. We should set the bar high with our own best practices. Without enforceable ethical standards, the baseline for knowledge has no upwards driver except those we set for ourselves. Don't turn a blind eye. Designing for net zero could be facilitated by large organizations like local authorities or big businesses, but they and many others are held back by outdated legislation, archaic practices, lack of funding, and dare we say it, the will to leave it to someone else. Benchmark and measure the social and environmental impact of work, not forgetting to consider the impact that work has on marginalized human stakeholders and the natural ecosystem.